All right, welcome again to today's webinar here with Etumos. Thanks for attending our webinar here today. Today's topic, simple solutions to complex MOPs problems. Again, I'm your host, Rusty Hall. Glad that everybody could join us. I know that we've all had complex problems and MOPs we've had to deal with, and some of those solutions are simple and some need to be more complex. Just a few items to note before we get started. Should you have any questions over today's materials, please feel free to use the Zoom Q&A. We will get to those questions as time allows. You can also use the chat feature, and if we have time, maybe a little live Q&A with some hand raises if you want to jump on and talk. Should we encounter any technical gremlins, please bear with us, as that sometimes happens with online webinars, but we will get up and running as soon as possible should anything like that occur. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on demand. So look for that coming in a follow-up email. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our expert for today, Mr. Vinny Sosa. 10 plus years in marketing roles, troubleshooting technical issues. Vinny brings a vast knowledge of all things MarTech. In his years of experience, he's helped hundreds of clients overcome not just simple solutions, but also the most complex marketing stack integrations and data flow challenges you can imagine. We're lucky to have Vinny here with us today to talk about those solutions that can be simple and those that need to be a little more complex and robust. So Vinny, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Rusty. So I really appreciate that, that wonderful introduction. I'm not very good at accepting those, but thank you very much. It sounded great. I hope I do well.
Oh yeah, you should expect no less. Vinny, a little bit of, on this topic, right? The simple solutions to complex MOPS challenges. I, as a practitioner, I know I tend to get trapped in my own toolbox. When I have a challenge come up, the first place I go to are the old familiar tools that I've used in the past, or the systems that I tend to be the most familiar with. And oftentimes as a practitioner, you're under a tight timeline, a deadline to get something done. So you just go to the tools that you know how to work the fastest, but that may not always be the most scalable and robust solution. So I'm looking forward to getting a little more information today on how we can kind of break out of that toolbox.
Yeah, you know what? That's what you're doing there is only natural. I know I do the same thing. I've been exposed to a lot of tools, and so my toolbox might be a little bigger than some marketers. But I guess that's really the point of today's discussion. And so I think that's kind of a really good segue into just getting on with it, right? Because we do have a lot to cover. But as we go through this, I really do want our attendees here to just keep in the back of their mind, look, you may not have some of the challenges that we discuss here, or you might not be familiar with some of the tools here, and they might seem a little scary or introduce some anxiety because that's what new things do, right? The whole point of this presentation, and hopefully many more to follow in the same sort of ilk, is we want to help you sort of plant that seed so that if you come upon these issues or these challenges, that there's other ways to solve them and you can look back on them. All right. So that's to Rusty's point. And then like I said, the other thing is some of these things may seem to some people like simple solutions because they have certain tools available to them. And to some folks, they might seem more complex. And so I just want to put that out there because it's not a misnomer, right? I named this simple solutions because I look at it and it kind of seems like they're simple to me, right? So it's totally okay to go through this and say, man, I do have more questions. How can I get in touch with these folks? We're always available, right, Rusty?
Yeah, anytime you can reach out and pick Vinny's vast knowledge of his giant toolbox. He's got the Bob Vila set.
I don't have a beard though. All right, cool. So today we're going to talk about two key topics. We're going to break them down into two parts of the presentation. And I think, Rusty, after each one, are we going to open up the floor for questions or wait until the end?
Yeah, we'll open up after the two major sections because they are kind of a little bit different topics. So yeah,
Great.
Feel free. I'll take a pause and we can go through the questions list at that point.
Awesome. So the two topics are standardizing data within your marketing automation platform, and then another one is strategies for fighting spam that you might not know. I know these two kind of seem unrelated. They are they both have to do with data. Hopefully, you understand why by the end of this presentation. So first, let's start out with standardizing your data within your map. Uh, let's kind of highlight this problem. I don't think this is a problem that's going to be obscure, abstract to anybody, right? I mean, data is pretty much at the center of marketing. And if you don't have clean data, if you don't have reliable data, if you don't have accurate data or standardized data, everything in your marketing portfolio is in your marketing ecosystem is going to suffer from, improperly routing leads to sending out errant emails to potentially reducing your sender score to your analytics, right? You can't group things properly. You can't report on things properly. You can't analyze things properly if your data is a mess. On the flip side, though, not all marketers have access to all of the different strategies and tools that are available to help them standardize that data. In some cases, they're dependent on other teams to do it. In other cases, they don't really know all of the things that are available to them and the steps they can take to standardize some of their information. So let's go through what some of those options might look like. So I like to break this problem down into three approaches. Okay, the first one is kind of like what Rusty was talking about in the beginning, where you basically go to the tools and the functionality, the capabilities that you're most familiar with, and that's within the map, right? So most people, so MAP stands for Marketing Automation Platform, if you didn't know that. But most people, when they have to try to solve a problem with data in their marketing automation platform, will seek solutions and capabilities within the marketing automation platform that allow them to correct these issues, okay? So that's within the map. Second is offloaded. So the more advanced approach to some of this stuff, and many of you have probably already hit this, is you dig in deep, you do everything you can, you hack the heck out of your marketing automation platform and squeeze everything you possibly can out of it. But in the end, you know that there's got to be another system that you got to bring into play to offload some of the processing. You may say, I'm going to continue to do some of the most basic stuff inside of my marketing automation platform, but when I offload, I'm going to offload more of the really complex, heavy-handed, things that require a certain higher level of processing. And then finally, the next one is pre-map. And pre-map is one that a lot of many folks, I feel, don't give consideration to because it does require a little more effort, but it is really viable and it's really helpful, not just for your marketing automation platform, but for your entire marketing portfolio. Anywhere that your data goes, you can actually share information using a pre-map strategy. So let's drill down into each one of these three. When we look at the pros and cons of standardizing data inside of your marketing automation platform, hey, the big pro is I don't have to pay for anything else, right? Free. I love free. It's single system containment. So the concept of single system containment is that I don't have my logic, my standardization rules spread across multiple platforms. When that happens, it becomes really difficult to trace how data is being manipulated or transformed if the rules are everywhere and you don't see those activities occurring in one system. So single system containment is a good thing. It's easiest to configure, right? It's something that you're all comfortable with. And it works well with form fills as well as with imported data, right? So you can use those two triggers to kick off workflows that transform your data. The cons of a strategy like this are that you first have to capture that data in your map in order for it to be processed. That can be a bad thing. And the reason it can be a bad thing is because, it's great. Hey, if you've got all your standardization rules in place and there's absolutely zero leakage and you have accounted for every single possible non-standard data scenario, then it's not a problem. But I'm sure you're all sitting there going, yeah, right, that's not possible.
Yeah, accounting for every.
If you've worked with a human, you know it's not possible to encounter the level of, well, let me not go there. So yeah, you're not going to be able to capture all of those things. And because data is already in your system, if there is no rule to handle a particular error, then there's potential for an uncaptured error or an uncaptured, unstandardized data set to move its way through your systems and sync from your marketing automation platform. The other thing is you're just limited. You're limited to what your marketing automation platform can do. So if you have really simple needs for transformation and standardization, by all means, use your marketing automation platform, but you are going to be limited to its capabilities. For example, when we work in Marketo, one of the most recent things that came up for me is we cannot calculate the difference between two dates inside of Marketo. Yeah, we think about doing that sort of stuff potentially for scoring and recency, et cetera, but that's just an example of a limitation that we deal with.
That's the old Marketo doesn't math scenario that you run into.
That's right. Marketo doesn't math. I like that one. The other thing too is your marketing automation platform is built to automate marketing, right? It's not built for data transformation. And so you want to make sure that whenever you're using any of your system resources, you're using them to process communications, to process things that are marketing related, not data related, right? So if you're doing heavy amounts of transformation in your map, you're using resources in a way that's not necessarily benefiting the core function of that marketing automation platform. And then they may require many cumbersome steps. Like I said, you kind of have to hack your way through the system. And just like Rusty said, right, you can't, Marketo doesn't math, right? What about this? If you need to transform country names, you kind of have to have step by step for every country that you want to look for, and every permutation of a country name, right? So that may not be as effective. And when you start coming up upon these walls, that's when you want to start considering some outsourced work, some offloading of that work. So let's talk a little bit about offloading. Okay, now I purposefully did not go deep into the whole marketing automation kind of triggers and workflows and the whole step-by-step of that, because number one, I think it's something that most marketers are familiar with, and number two, the differences between organizations and how they process data are so vast, it doesn't really pay to go into it. But we take that to the next level and we say, okay, now let's start offloading some of these processes. Well, there are options out there. The most familiar one to a lot of the folks in our MOPs pros community and in MOPs professionals at large is a web service called Flowboost. Right. So Flowboost is there is a community version that's available for lower volume use cases that a lot of people find a lot of great use for and can be used for this. And it does math, and it does a heck of a lot more than math. But the pros of using a system like this are that basically sky's the limit. Anything you want to do, anything you want to calculate, any things you want to compare, any way you want to transform a record or multiple pieces of data, you can do it with Flowboost, or even your own custom service that behaves similarly to Flowboost, right? It offloads some or all of the processing. So if you have that desire to contain everything in a single system, you can offload everything to Flowboost. Or the great thing about something like Flowboost from your map is that the responses that come back from Flowboost are activities in your system. So they're all traceable, which means you still have single system containment of logic. Even if you're using a product like Flowboost, you're still containing everything inside of Marketo. So super duper useful to have everything in one place. Depending on the edition that you go with the Flowboost, is low cost or no cost. Easy to deploy, super easy. It's just a webhook. Again, here it works with form fills and imports. The cons are going to be a little bit, similar in that in order to act on the data has to be captured first, right? So, as long as you have 90% of your information captured, of your processing logic accounted for, great, this is probably a good solution, but if you got a lot of edge cases and you're not going to be able to capture all of the different things that could potentially happen to your data, this might be an issue for you. In particular with Flowboost, it does require comfort with light JavaScript. Now I know, myself, I don't find that to be a con, but like I said, right, simplicity is in the eye of the beholder. And so depending on where you are with your understanding of technology and how comfortable you feel using templated code, right? It's I hate to say it's code, but they're just instructions, right? That are copy paste and they're in the Flowboost manual. Your level of comfort with that may or may not be a con for this kind of solution. And then in this particular case, it's not suitable for bulk or batch processing, right? So you can't send hundreds of thousands of records in an overnight job to Flowboost, but it's great for transactional processing. And so just to kind of put the, you know, put the I on top of the dot on top of the I and the cross on the T, Flowboost is a secure web service that is accessed from your marketing automation platform via a webhook. Notice I did not say it's accessed via Marketo. Flowboost can actually be used from any system that can send a webhook with data and can either accept an API call back as to write or update that data, or can map the results from that data back into a client record. So Flowboost is super duper flexible, and it's not just for Marketo. Super simple, very powerful, advanced data transformation. If you have a developer friend too, forget it. The possibilities of Flowboost are just endless. Ask Rusty, him and I are best buds.
I have a Vinny for all those needs, so I'm set.
And then you can use it, like I said, to extend the capability of any system that supports webhooks, and leverage any API library using a webhook. So you can actually call another system from Marketo, right? But Marketo doesn't let you access APIs to any other systems. You can do that using Flowboost. So lots of potential here, depending on how advanced you want to get. A couple of other use cases to maintain your data quality. You can standardize capitalization super easily. You can find and replace data errors like misspellings for common misspellings that you might find in your own data. You can do derivative or calculated attributes. Like if you find certain keywords in the company name, you can assume an industry, or you can assume a function from keywords that are in titles. Or like I said, calculate the number of days between two dates. You can standardize countries, industries, employee count ranges, titles, market labels, all the things that you might want to use for lead routing. And what's more, all the things that I just mentioned here, I can do in one webhook, one step from one campaign. Send all that data and get all of my responses back in one fell swoop, and Marketo doesn't have to do anything. Right? So that's fabulous for me, especially for an instance that has really needs some of that performance power back. Other things that you can do to extend system capability are you can limit the number of event registrants if you want to cap event registrants with Flowboost. A little bit more of an advanced use, but certainly possible. You can do wait lists, referral registrations. You can count promotion codes. You can distribute leads into buckets. Again, the possibilities here are endless. You can read on as well. Like I mentioned, you can use any webhook to call an API from another system. So lots and lots of things you can do with Flowboost. For standardization in particular, the stuff on the left is cake for Flowboost. And like I said, you do it in one fell swoop and you're done. You got any comment there, Rusty?
No, I mean, I did want to address, Stephanie said that we answered the question here, but just some additional reasons why offloading, has some advantages versus doing it in the system. And just from my experience, you were talking about this kind of endless smart campaigns that you have to do for data standardization if you're doing it within Marketo itself. But the other drawback there too is, Marketo's kind of arbitrary on when it fires certain campaigns. It's just based on the load. So unless you're using a really advanced kind of request campaign structure, you don't know when those campaigns are necessarily going to take priority over something you might want processed sooner rather than later. And offloading helps solve that problem as well.
All right. So sequencing of when some of these steps happen can be a challenge. Yeah, good one. All right, great. So, we talked about the offloading strategy, and that's all Flowboost, and really you should go and check that product out. The next one is pre-map data collection. Some of you might identify this as custom forms, or maybe it's a pre-processing service that you might have. And basically what it entails is creating your own service, whether it be with Flowboost, whether it be with an iPaaS solution, or integration platform as a service, or if your dev or IT team decide to create something from scratch and host it on their own servers. There's lots of ways something like this can come to life, but the whole concept behind this is that data that you capture from both forms or from imports does not go directly into your marketing automation platform. It goes first to a processing service that cleans that data, analyzes it to make sure it meets your validation requirements, and then submits valid data over to your marketing automation platform, and concurrently, maybe even to other systems. Like we had a client recently that wanted to submit data to Marketo as well as to a Redshift database. And they wanted to do it simultaneously, not one after another. They wanted to send data to both places at the same time because they had some real-time processing that needed to happen in both systems. That's possible when you have a pre-map solution like this. The cool thing about this is the data is processed before being captured. So there's really no way, if it doesn't meet your validation, and if you haven't caught if you haven't caught a non-standard data set or created logic for something that's non-standard, you could just prevent it from going to the map in the first place, right? It's the data validation that will stop it from getting into your marketing systems, and you can have it wait in your pre-map solution for you to analyze and review that data before allowing it to continue into your systems. You get lots of processing options and capabilities. So not only do you get all of the normalization and standardization features, you can do things like enrich your data before it goes into your back office. You can do enrichment with third party, but you can also reach back into your own database and enrich form submissions and imports with data you already have before submitting into your marketing automation platform, so that you can then act on real data that you validated, not just data that's submitted by users or imported from third parties, et cetera. In this particular case, you're going to offload almost all of your normalization and standardization and enrichment processing. It's happening all in front of your systems, right? I think there's a lot of really good design work that can be done with solutions like this that give power, or keep the power of the data transformation piece in the hands of marketing while still making this a dev-led solution. And like I said before, you can send data to multiple systems concurrently. So one of the cool things you can do with something like this is, if you have an application, let's say a product or something, a SaaS app, where a user is registering and you need to create an account for them first, and you want to validate some other data as well, and maybe you need to also process some kind of transaction before sending them over to your marketing automation platform. You can do all that stuff, that pre-processing, then send them to your map with all of the account details and potentially the transaction information, so that any onboarding emails that you send out from your marketing automation platform already have all that data in them, right? That's a common use case that we see at our clients. The cons of something like this are, this is like the Cadillac of data processing and normalization. It's going to be your highest cost, your highest effort, your highest time to market. Of course, if it's designed properly, it will last you a very long time, can service many different systems, and will bring you a ton of value. And I guarantee your analytics team will thank you for this. Now, by the way, there are lots of systems that can be used to do quasi sort of, pre-processing. And a CDP is one of them. So you might want to look into customer data platforms if you're interested in something like this. A couple of other cons: this could be bypassed by direct import, right? People who have access to downstream systems a lot of times can abuse that access. So, they could always import their own data directly into a marketing automation platform. That is a hard risk smacking thing that they do, right? So you're going to have to catch those. It is going to introduce dependency on dev expertise. So it's something you're going to have to, keep tabs on and make sure that you maintain good documentation on, because turnover it could potentially impact how the life of this and how it performs within your environment. It may break some native tracking features. So as this thing is built, it's going to be really important for you to translate your requirements, not just from a business perspective, but from a technical perspective. You want to make sure that if the data that's going from one system to another is due to a form fill and you're writing that into Marketo, well, I would want to make sure that it preserves the form fill activity that marketers need to trigger off of. You don't want it to look like an API activity. You want it to look like a native form fill from Marketo, along with Munchkin association and all that stuff. So that's what I'm talking about. You really got to get into the nitty gritty to try to retain some of that native tracking capability. And then, you know, it could introduce multi-system logic sprawl. And the reason is because there are going to be times when, you know, you have this organizational logic that is in your pre-map processing system, but then there's application level transformation that still may need to happen. You got to have good governance with a system like this. And so the result, though, still is that some of your logic is going to be organizational, is going to be global, is going to be in your pre-map and in your pre-map processor. And then some of that logic is going to be in your marketing automation platform or your specific application. And so you're going to have to go to two systems or have good visibility into how both systems are manipulating data if you want to triage an issue that you might have in processing data. And I just wanted to give you a quick visual into how something like this might look. So like, for example, if you have a WordPress website and you're using Gravity Forms can collect data for you. And whenever there's a form fill, can webhook that data to another system, your preprocessor, which could be built using Flowboost, Tray, Workato, any iPaaS system, or any custom system you want. In there, you will do all your pre-processing, your validation, your transformation, your enrichment, your all of that stuff. And then you can even, like I say, grab licenses or create accounts or whatnot in your software as a service application if that's what you're selling. And then go ahead and synchronize back to Marketo Engage using APIs, okay, to kind of emulate that native functionality that users are familiar with when they see a form fill or when they see an import of some sort, okay? All right, so we've been through a lot, but we covered 3 key scenarios. One is processing data within the map. Another one is offloading some of those processes to simplify you know, the activities that are going on in the map and offload that processing to regain back some power within your instance to a product like Flowboost. And then finally, the solution we just talked about was pre-map. So having a solution, a custom solution that stands in front of your marketing automation platform that allows you to process data before it even gets into your marketing automation platform, right? Or any other marketing technology, right? So I think now, Rusty, it's a pretty good time to just take a quick pause and see if we have any questions.
Yeah, let's take a quick pause. So yeah, make sure you submit your questions either in the chat or the Zoom Q&A. We did have a question kind of related to Flowboost, but any kind of JavaScript processing. Are there resources that you recommend? I know we have some recipes that come with Flowboost, but are there resources where people can go if they're interested in learning that kind of JavaScripting, and how should they start?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really great question. I don't think that a lot of people, especially those who have a little anxiety about JavaScript,
Right.
I don't think they are fully aware of all of the vast majority of training that's out there that can really get you up to speed with JavaScript. So Mozilla.org is excellent. It is excellent for beginner JavaScript, for tutorials. It provides the best examples on notation. And the great thing is that Flowboost isn't built with some sort of private version of JavaScript. It is built to use the same functionality that you're going to see on Mozilla. So just about anything that you can build with all of the JavaScript examples, any instructions that you can build with all the JavaScript examples and tutorials and stuff on Mozilla, you're going to be able to use with Flowboost. The other thing too, just like you mentioned, if you just search for Flowboost implementation guide or quick start guide, I think is what it's called. There's a number of examples to a lot of the things that we talked about and some of the things that we didn't.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, good resources out there for that. Another question too is, do you recommend like having kind of a evaluation process, let's say when there's a new process that needs to be put in place for data normalization or data transformation, rather than immediately going back to that old toolbox that I mentioned first? Would you recommend that there be an evaluation process for that, MOPS professional to go, hey, here are the tools that are out there. Maybe I should look at each one of these boxes before I decide on which solution I'm going to use. And what would that process look like?
I mean, yes, right. I like the idea of evaluating, but the real world is sometimes problems are so small, you just kind of jump into it and you're like, oh, I know how to
Right.
solve this. That's not an issue, right? I think the trigger for people is if you have, five, maybe 3 to 5 flows that are doing data normalization inside of your map, it's probably your trigger that you need to look for a better solution, right? If you have flows that, I mean, I know I used to work with a company that had over 150 flow steps to correct country naming issues,
For
right?
one field, right?
Yeah, yeah. Right. That is a key indicator that you should not be doing that in Marketo, right?
Right.
So those are the things that kind of spark the whole, hey, is there another option? I know someone has done this. They probably have found a better way to do this. Let's take a look at some of our options. Let's explore, right? But real world, like I said, sometimes you just got to dig in and do it. Just
Yeah.
understand the triggers, right?
I think that's probably a good, a good place like MOPs Pros comes in, right? If we're one of
Oh,
the online
excellent. Yeah.
marketing communities, if you've got something, maybe just before you dive in and start building, maybe pose the question and see, what other
That is
people's
so good.
experience has been, right?
No, you're 100% right. That is such good guidance. I mean, I kind of assume nowadays, right? Like everyone knows about the MOPS Pros community, but you may not, right? I mean,
Yeah.
go to mopspros.com, sign up, and it's like few thousand folks that are in this Slack community, and I find them so useful even as a consultant, right? A lot of people kind of expect that we know everything, but we can bounce stuff off of
Yep.
professionals and get input into our solutions. It's awesome. It's awesome to speak to your peers and see what kind of stuff they've done. So yeah,
Great, yeah,
that's really
great,
good.
great resource. We'll put a link to that resource in the follow-up email too for our attendees. So,
Mhm.
all right, I think that brings us to the end of the questions for this kind of first half. So, Vinny, if you want to keep trucking along and teach us how to mitigate bots, that'd be great.
Cool. Yeah. So strategies for fighting spam that you may not know. Spiting spam, right?
So
Smiting it.
superhero, yeah.
All right. So first of all, again, let's define the problem, right? So spam bots, I don't think everybody knows the spelling. I don't think I got the spelling right here. It could be S lowercase spam, right? Bots. It doesn't matter. Okay. The whole idea is there are computers, machines that are coming to your website. They're ruining your analytics. They're submitting data that is not trustworthy. It makes its way downstream into your other systems and can wreak havoc on business intelligence, on routing, on campaigns, on sender reputation. It could increase your database costs. Like something's got to be done about this, and everybody freaks out. When they start seeing that they have a lot of spam submissions on a particular form, and immediately they try to find the silver bullet. How do I deal with spam? Implement this. Great, problem's done. Let's take a step back and look at some real world solutions. Okay. So again, here, I like breaking these down these challenges into 3 key areas, right? So here, the first one is protect your website. There are a number of strategies. You'll have to work with your web team. It really depends on how you're sort of, set up. And I'll go into some of these strategies too. Your website is your most precious asset, right? It's how people interact with you nowadays. And, you need to be, as a marketer and a marketing operations person, you need to be aware of what levers you can pull on your website to improve downstream activity, right? And when I say downstream activity, I mean all of the systems that capture data that come after your website, right? What can you do at the website to make all of that data flow even better? And just the nature of a website, it's going to take a more technical approach. But I think that we can share some strategies here that can help you get the conversation started with the right people in your environment. Next is protecting your forms. And this is really where everybody thinks, Google's reCAPTCHA is the only solution, and it's all I can do, and I got to find myself a developer and get that implemented. I'm here to say that palatability for that solution, as well as efficacy, right? The efficiency and reliability of the solution, they're all in question, right? I mean, you might be a smaller organization that has more flexibility to try a different strategy. Even as a larger organization, you might be under the impression that reCAPTCHA solves it all. And sorry, that's not the case. And if this is an issue for you, you're going to have to be prepared to put together something that's a little bit more strategic from a solve perspective, right? And then finally, protecting your communications and data. So after you get information in your marketing automation platform, and with the understanding that that data is going to be coming from lots of different sources that you don't necessarily have as much control over as you would like, or as your website, right? What are some of the things that you can do to make sure that your communications to your clients go out accurately, and that you're protecting your analytics and lead data, so that you're not so that you're sending as much accuracy as possible to other teams that are counting on that clean and accurate information to do what they need to do, right? So let's talk about protecting your website. So first, it's really neat. My time as a director of web intelligence taught me a lot about tag management, and about how I can use tools like Google Tag Manager, which is by far one of the most undervalued and underused tools in the marketer's toolbox. We should do a session just on that. But how you can use tools like Google Tag Manager to tool up your website, to add capability to your website without necessarily having to go through a full dev motion in order to introduce a feature on the site. You can use, with Google Tag Manager, for example, you can call services whenever somebody views a page or whenever somebody lands on your site, from cleantalk.org or spamhouse.org or ipify.org, okay, to tell you whether or not the IP address of a particular user or any other indicators would identify that user as coming from basically from a bad origin, right? Whether it's a spam origin or somebody who is associated with malicious activity, right? If that's the case, there are a couple of things that your web team can do to try to minimize any impact they might have. They can add them to an htaccess file, and that prevents them from loading your website. You got to be careful with that one, right? Because you want to make sure you don't affect real users. You can use Google Tag Manager and say, oh, if I identified this person as coming from a malicious IP address, why am I going to light up Google Analytics? Why am I going to let them submit forms? Why would I even give them a Munchkin ID? Let me not institute any of that. Let me not execute any of that code, so that I'm not capturing any of their activity in my analytics. That does come with downsides, right? Because you may want to capture some of that activity so that you can identify spam bots and stuff like that. So there is a little bit of a downside. But there's strategies to deal with that too, where you can capture the activity and then filter it out so that you can sequester it for use in investigating spam activity and not have it impact any of your valid analytics. And
Yeah,
then go ahead.
I was just going to say this particular one is, from my years in cybersecurity when I was working that, even your web team will love this, because if you get a denial of service attack where they're trying to, crash your website on you, application firewall, that's one step beyond even just data management. That's just a great web practice.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and I was going to mention application firewalls. You just mentioned it, but when you have your website hosted by like a WordPress or something like that, they have attack mitigation strategies and technologies already in place. It's one of the benefits of using their platforms and getting one of their top tier service offerings, right? But if you're hosting your own website on your own servers, chances are you're going to have an application firewall in front of it. And you as a marketer want to be aware of what kind of things that application firewall is listening to, because you yourself may actually cause activity that looks to one of those application firewalls as if it's malicious activity, when in fact it's just a really good producing campaign, right? So be aware of that kind of stuff. So if the problem arises, you know exactly where to go to mitigate it quickly. Okay. All right, protecting your forms. I think when most people think about spam bots and that kind of stuff, this is where they put most of their attention into protecting their forms and preventing anything who's not a human from submitting data into their systems. Now, I'm not going to talk about reCAPTCHA until the next slide. Let's focus on a couple of other strategies. Okay. First, understand that, CAPTCHA, the whole idea behind CAPTCHA is just a mechanism to try to trick a computer or identify a computer or computer-like activities on your website, right? If something is happening really quickly, quicker than a human can do it, well, that's a sure sign. It's probably not a human being, right? But there's things like challenge questions, for example, where I know you've probably encountered a form where it asks you a word-based math problem and you kind of have to fill that out really quick, or even just a simple math problem where most of these spam bots are, they're not configured to compute stuff. They just look at a label for a field and they insert that data. Now, that's not to say that there aren't sophisticated bots out there, but this is one of the methods that you can use where you just create a field and you label that field, let's say what's 1 more than 2 plus 2 or something like that. And it's more difficult for a spam bot to answer. And then once that data is submitted into your system, you can evaluate that field and go, did they provide a number, right? So that's one way to do it. Another way, and this is my favorite way, and this is the first thing, the absolute first thing that you should do before anything else if you feel like you have spam issues, and that's using a honeypot. Rusty, you got a comment here? I see you on mute, buddy.
Step one, I've implemented many a honeypot. So yeah, that should be your step one.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that is like super. Is super a word? Yes, it's super. It is now. Super easy. It's super easy for, you want to talk about simple solutions. This is the one that a marketer can implement. If you've built the form in Marketo and you're trying to protect the form that you embedded on your website, just add a hidden field, name it whatever. What is today's date? Make it look like a legit field that's going to submit data into a legit, field on the record. You're going to hide that field. The whole idea behind honeypotting is a human can't see that field. So they shouldn't fill it in, right? But in a lot of cases, spam bots fill in all fields. So to them, many of them don't tell the difference between hidden fields and visible fields. So they see something like, what is today's date? It looks like a legit field potentially. They fill it in with a date. When you get a form submission with that field filled in, that is likely a spam bot, okay? Now, notice I use the word likely, okay? There's no real definitive way to say that somebody is a spam bot. So you need to be very careful, at least at first, when you're implementing all of these strategies, to quarantine or isolate leads or records that you think are spammy submissions, and take a look to see if there's anything in there that you potentially misidentified, and try to change your criteria for identification before you start deleting records en masse. Right? But honeypotting is my absolute favorite, and it's something that's totally accessible to from the most new and rookie of marketing ops people to the most seasoned veterans. Okay. Another thing is, hey, if we're talking about computers, right, that are trying to submit data within a form, how about you add some interactivity to a form? Right? So rather than just having field sets that people pick from, a scale, right? If you have the opportunity to add a little bit of interactivity to some of the data that you want to collect, right? Maybe the date field isn't just a date you type in, it's something you have to select from a widget, and it's a required field, right? If that's, the data set that you need. Anywhere you can add interactivity may help to decrease your spammy submissions, because a lot of spam bots can't deal with that kind of interactivity. Next, time-tracked submissions. This one's a little bit more involved because it is going to require some scripting on your website. But spam bots, when they traverse a website, they have very little page time, right? They load a page, they can parse all of the code on a page and then move on and load another page. And when they land on a page with a form, they land on the page and complete the form so fast it does not look human. You can time that with script on your front end and actually submit that amount of time that they used as a hidden field. And if you do that, you can use that again as another identifier of potentially spammy activity. You do that along with a honeypot field, and that could potentially give you a stronger indication that you're dealing with spam bots. Okay, and then there's the last one, automated spam bot identification. So I'm here to tell you, reCAPTCHA is not, it is not the only solution. Geez, I'm thinking, what does CAPTCHA stand for?
I was going to ask the same question because I don't think I've ever known as often as I've used it.
It's an acronym. I think it's like computer algorithm. I actually have to look this up again. It's like a computer something test for determining if a person is a computer or a human. Like C or H stands for computer or human. It's just a ridiculous acronym. I think we need to get rid of acronyms, man. But needless to say, CAPTCHA is not the only solution. reCAPTCHA is not the only solution, and Google is not the only solution here either. Just remember, right? If you choose to use something that is pretty standardized and that everyone is using, chances are that anyone who's hosting a spam bot and running a spam bot against your site will already have pre-configured or coded into the logic of their spam bot how to get around that CAPTCHA mechanism. So you want to try and do things that that aren't as widely done, and you want to apply multiples of these strategies to try to prevent spammy submissions. Right now, just a couple of other examples. reCAPTCHA. The current version of Google's reCAPTCHA doesn't require a user to pick anything or do anything. They just fill out your form and this thing works in the background. And the more pages you put it on your website, the more of a profile it can generate for that particular user's behavior. And it creates that profile and it submits it in the background with in a hidden field in your form. And once that form gets into your marketing automation platform, you take that value, send it to Google, and Google will tell you, hey, by the way, that is a spam bot. You probably want to do something about that. And they'll give you some details too that you can use to implement a different strategy or approach on how you want to handle that kind of submission. Some of them are soft IDs. Some of them are much more trusted, like higher level or higher rated spam IDs, right? So the confidence level is going to vary for everything Google gives back to you. And you can use that confidence level along with the other information they give you, again, to take action of some sort. But there's text-based CAPTCHA methods, mathematical, similar to what I had mentioned in the previous slide, image-based, right, where you have to identify an image, or 3D, where you have the 9-panel thing, and it's like, check everything that looks like a bridge, right?
Those are always fun.
I love that one. I love that one. It's like a game.
It's like right in the. I love the ones that have like just right in the corner of the frame. You're like, I don't know, is that a bridge still in
there? It's a red light. I see red. By the way, I'm colorblind. This isn't going to work for me.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, and then finally, protect your communications and data. Bad data, spammy data is inevitably going to get into your system. So it's not just about protecting your form fills. It's not just about trying to protect your site and keeping things from reaching your site in the first place. You have to, in Marketo, they have a feature for email bot activity filtering. If you turn this on, they basically have already subscribed to a service that helps to identify IP addresses of known spam bots and spam nets. They use that to protect, your analytics to a degree, right? If you send email to a spam address and that bot clicks on your email, opens that email, those activities will not make their way into your activity log, and hence your analytics for email performance are going to be preserved. That's kind of the whole point of that feature. Double opt-in. Double opt-in is great. I know it takes a lot of bravery, not just on the part of marketing operations, because marketing operations wants to do this kind of stuff. It takes a lot of bravery to say, you know what, I'm going to ask twice. They're going to tell me they want to subscribe, and I'm going to ask them to make sure, because I want to make sure that they actually want me to communicate with them. And I know that I'm going to increase the quality of my, lead database by doing so. But sometimes from a cultural perspective, you can't do that, or minds haven't changed enough or whatnot. But if you can do double opt-in, this is the kind of thing that will help to maintain a hygiene in your database. Email validation. Lots of email hygiene services out there, and many of them identify common spam traps. You absolutely want to subscribe to something like this. Etumos Verify is certainly an option. Never Bounce is another one that I see a lot of customers using. But basically, you're just looking for a service that can help you identify bad addresses, so that you're not sending out emails to these addresses and getting bad analytics. And even worse, you're not reducing your email sender score by sending out to a known spam trap and then getting blocked and having to deal with all that. Here's another tactic. I said it before and I'll say it again. Please do not delete spam records. It's I know you kind of get angry and you're like, these things have been messing with my life forever. I need to delete the spam record. When you identify spam records, it's great. You're a superhero. And the more you can identify, the better. The first step is to quarantine those records. Don't do anything with them. Just quarantine them. Make sure that they're not used by anything until you get an opportunity to look at them. Analyze them for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, a general cycle, something that's representative of the cycle of your business. Okay. Review them with your analytics team and try to come up with some logic to handle those that is appropriate. Do not delete these records before you put them in a database for safekeeping. Just put the information, even if it's just the email address or whatever, into some database that that BI or your web intelligence team or your marketing intelligence team can use to filter out everything that you have suspected as being spam in the future and historically. Okay, and that will make your reporting that much more accurate. Create web analytics filters. So every web analytics tool out there allows you to create filtered views to clean up your data, so that you can view clean data. Create a view with your with spam bots, and create a view that removes them, so that you can tell the difference and you can see how good your strategies are at filtering this kind of stuff out. And then if you can justify the cost, absolutely subscribe to the International Spiders and Bots list. I think you have to be a part of the IAB in order to do this. And it's a pretty hefty cost, but if you can justify it, you get a lot of spam activity, definitely take a look at it, right? And that is it for me. Do we have any questions on that topic here, Rusty?
Awesome. No, just a couple of things that pro tip from Kelly Jo, who chimed in, that when you are doing a honeypot, don't name it honeypot or spam bot on the field itself. So
I know, right?
Something like today's date is great. Quick question on that. I've seen it implemented several ways. The one we looked at today was a text field that you enter the text on, but I also seen people use a Boolean field. I assume the text might be a little better way to go than just a Boolean checkbox.
Yeah. What are you talking with the honeypot?
Yeah, with the honeypot.
Yeah, I don't. I think any time that you could try to force a computer to put something in that a human would put in one way, but a computer may not get that level of specificity. You probably want to do that. With a Boolean field or a checkbox, there's really only two answers, actually three: blank, false, and true. Right?
Yeah.
If you make it required, it either needs to be true or false. So a computer really can't get that wrong. You want to give them something a little bit more of a challenge.
A little more of a challenging question.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, get in your questions if you have any. In the meantime, I'm going to announce the winner of our CAPTCHA contest. It goes to David for completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and humans apart. So
that is like the best acronym ever.
It's the best they could do.
Oh, man.
All right. You're welcome, David. All right. Well, we're coming up to the end of time here. So just if you got a quick question, do pop it in the chat. Thank you on behalf of myself and the Etumos webinar team for joining today. And a special thanks to Vinny Sosa for providing that knowledge dump. May we all have better data hygiene and less bot traffic because of him.
I hope so.
Stay tuned for a follow-up email that'll be coming out to all attendees. We are going to make this available on demand as well as announcing future webinars. So check your inbox for that. We, don't honeypot us because we're legitimate, and we want you on the next one.
May your marketing toolbox officially feel expanded.
Let it feel expanded and use those tools. Thanks all again, and we will see you on the next Etumos webinar.